With polls moving in their favor in several key states, Democrats are increasingly optimistic heading into November. But here's the problem. You could have said the same thing in 2016 and 2020, when many of those same polls in these battleground states ultimately proved way too optimistic for Democrats. So now, given that recent history, the polls also have some Democrats quietly very nervous. A recent analysis in the New York Times comparing past polls to actual election results put it this way. Yes, the polling warning signs are flashing again. Excuse me. In 2016, for example, polls showed Hillary Clinton would be the next president of the United States, winning handily in states such as Wisconsin. The Real Clear Politics polling average put her up more than 6 points in the state. So confident she even skipped a visit in the waning hours of the campaign. And then
CNN now projects that Donald Trump will carry the state of Wisconsin. He will win Wisconsin with its 10 electoral votes.
There's a big old call to make right now, and that is Fox News is projecting that Donald Trump has won the state of Wisconsin.
4 years later, Joe Biden seemingly rode a wave into Wisconsin, with polls showing him up 10 points to Donald Trump. Biden actually won by just 0.6 of a percentage point. He went from a projected 10-point lead in the polls, according to the New York Times analysis, to less than 1. Democrats are seeing a pattern here. The polls in certain crucial states are consistently showing Democrats with comfortable leads, only to see the races get much tighter once actual votes are counted, and small Trump leads in 16 and 20 that grew much larger on election night. So here's the Democrats' fear. Polls currently show Democratic Senate candidates leading in critical states like North Carolina, Wisconsin, etc., but polling in those states has proved inaccurate, underestimating Trump in 2020 by 3, 7, 9 points respectively. If they're wrong again by the same amount in 2022, Republicans win in all states, including Ohio. Suddenly, you're looking at a potential Republican Senate, in spite of all the Democratic enthusiasm. Now, accounting for that error, you're looking at the Republican margin of victory. What's strange is the pollsters seem to have done little to fix the problem. But even more notably, they don't even seem to know how to. The Times reports the major polling community post-mortem declared that it was impossible to definitely ascertain what went wrong in the 2020 election. But here's what we do know. They underestimated the Republican support in both elections. In 2016, one model found Hillary Clinton had an 85% chance of winning. Another gave her a 99% chance of becoming president. 99. So the concern, I don't know, might be electoral PTSD, the shock of losing to Trump in 2016 and Trump getting much closer than expected in 2020. According to the Times, quote, it raises the possibility that the apparent Democratic strength in Wisconsin and elsewhere in the 2022 midterms is a mirage, an artifact of persistent and unaddressed biases in survey research. Unaddressed, even though pollsters have known about it now for 6 years. But some on the left still arguing the polling numbers are real. This is different, including a new story out today from the New Republic, which lays out their reasoning. They say reason one, Trump is not on the ballot, and he gets supporters to the polls. No Trump, no turnout, the argument goes. Reason two, they say gas prices have continued to fall. It's not the issue it was once for Republicans. And reason three, according to the New Republic, Democrats have more issues, including abortion, to inspire voters to head to the polls. The conclusion for them is, quote, there are tantalizing reasons to suspect these polling numbers are not a mirage, that this time history may take a year off. So where does this leave us? And why is it so hard for the pollsters, whose numbers everyone watches, to get it more accurate? Joining me now is Lee Miringoff, the director of the Marist poll. Lee, thanks a lot for coming on the program. Appreciate it. Before I ask you more broadly about pollsters and polling, let me just ask you, do you think that this is potentially a mirage, or do you think that these numbers going into it are accurate as of today?
Well, I think, first of all, you have to start looking at some of the special elections, the registration figures, and the fact that the poll narrative is one where the Democrats, after June 24th with the Dobbs decision, did spike up in terms of their enthusiasm, so that the narrative has shifted from where we were 6 months ago, when we were talking about, a potential shellacking of the Democrats. Does that mean the Democrats are going to win the Senate and hold the House? No. But right now, we're seeing a more competitive narrative, certainly than we saw 6 months ago.
But do you think that we can count on, I don't mean to the point, I mean within the margin of error, the polls that are currently out there, and particularly the aggregation of some of the best polls, do you think that we can bank on those, or would you say I'd still be very cautious?
Well, I think caution in September for a November election is probably prudent anyway. These are, polls that we really hold to a precision that may be beyond realistic at this point. You have a fairly evenly divided country. It's not like one side is lopsided, the other is going to get a big landslide. So we don't have that kind of picture to deal with, but we know that there's a statistical margin of error, which very often gets lost in the editorial discussion about who's ahead and who's behind. Statistically, we know that some of those differences may not be real, but when you're talking about a 24/7 news cycle, you really need to be fast and thorough and on target. And you have so many polls out there of varying quality using different modes of data collection that the aggregates that you referred to sometimes put in the good with the bad and hope somehow it comes out correct. I think there's a lot to be said on this.
Let me ask you about the problem with the polling, right? It does seem it's been going in one direction, right? It's consistently underrepresenting, in particular, Trump voters. Why? And have you guys been able to figure out what went wrong and how to fix it?
Well, so here, let's go back to 2016. You talked about the Clinton-Trump race and the chances that Hillary Clinton was going to win. Those were not polls. Those aggregators were forecasting a result that was really unrealistic. You saw the 99% chance, the 85% chance. I think the lowest one was 70%. So all the models spun the narrative that Hillary Clinton was on her way. Clearly that was not the case in terms of the final outcome. But I think it's important to understand that those were not polls, that each of these modelers were using their own special sauce to use. All right,
but let's focus. Let me bring you back then to Wisconsin, even 2020. Sure. Aggregate of polls shows Biden up by 10. He wins by 0.6%. That's not within the margin of error. How did that happen, and what can be done to prevent it from happening again?
Well, there's a lot going on here. First of all, a lot of the polls in 2020 weighted their data by education because they thought that was the problem in missing Trump voters in 2016. It turned out that was not the fix. We never thought it was. We think it has to do with sampling and geography and making sure you get the right people in the poll to begin with, rather than trying to fix the data model at the end.
So you don't buy the New York Times. I apologize for interrupting. You don't buy the New York Times assessment that the pollsters don't know how to fix it.
Well, I think they admitted them. Most of the pollsters admitted it themselves. They weren't sure what the quick fix was. I think different pollsters are experimenting in a very difficult environment. Watch when the poll was conducted and how close it is to Election Day. Anything in 2016 that was done before the Comey letter a week out, was too early. It's very hard to accurately measure this because it's a moving target and the campaigns don't stop to allow our public polls. But watch the private polls in terms of what candidates are doing. Right now, the Republicans, as you talked about earlier in the program, are very concerned about the Lindsey Graham discussion. Yeah. Why? Because it's a big motivator for Democrats. So they want him to back off that, as Mitch McConnell was indicating and other Republicans. Well, so I think that's the kind of thing you have to look for. And different polls are different, have different quality right now. And I think it's important to separate those out. We need more gatekeepers in the media.
The good news about judging pollsters is it's about numbers. You can look at exactly what was said before. You can look at what the results were, but your point is make sure it's within the proper context. Lee, thank you very much.
You got to look at that. Appreciate it, Dan.
Yep, thanks for coming on the program. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your cable provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.